All right, my friends. Welcome, welcome. How's everyone doing? Welcome, welcome, everybody. All right, my friends, we're just going to settle in here for a second, and then we'll get going on some stuff. Excuse me if I'm coughing or any throat clears or whatever. It's just, pretty rough allergy season where I'm at right now. Also, if the puppy wakes up and makes some noise, we'll just have to power through that. He's asleep right now. We strategically take the dog on a walk before every stream. Wear out his energy reserves. All right, my friends. So, let's go ahead and get in some stuff. Yeah, I got water. All right, so I'll check in with chat here for a second, say what up, and we'll get into the outlook. If you're new here, I do the same kind of pattern every stream. We do these every Tuesday, by the way. But yeah, we'll jump into Bitcoin. We'll start off with the higher time frame, work our way down. Maybe we'll take a little bit of a glance at the S&P today, see what's going on. I'll share with you guys my big picture plans, and then we'll work our way down into the lower time frames. From there, we'll normally kind of divulge into a Q&A / altcoin section. Potentially going to be dropping some education today. If not today, then it will be next week. So yeah, I mean, I've been working on a new order flow video. I've got like 95% of the clips done for it. So I'm just going to be waiting on Lear to kind of put the last couple pieces together. But definitely keep an eye out for that. I'm going to be releasing it on YouTube. I'll give a little bit of a heads up on Twitter whenever it comes out. But it's going to be something you're going to want to watch. It's going to be really short, but it's going to give you a better insight into how to actually use flow nowadays. A lot of people that teach order flow nowadays haven't adapted with the times. And if you're still trying to trade, predatory liquidation price action and stuff, right? I mean, you're just sidelined perpetually, yeah? So I'm going to teach you guys the more modern way to trade flow in that video. It'll be a multi-part series, but the video that comes out hopefully later this week will be the intro to it. So yeah, how's the microphone, by the way, before I start the actual outlook and say anything serious? You guys hear me clearly today? Everything sound good? Thank you to all my returning viewers. I see your guys' faces, or I guess your profile pictures, which will, to me, that is your face. So what up, everybody? Glad to always see the homies tuning in. All right, guys. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and lock in for a second. Actually, one more thing before I start that. Normally when I do my streams, I turn off a lot of my programs and applications to kind of free up memory. My computer has pretty decent RAM, so I'm going to start to test doing live streams with more and more order flow tools running live. I just never want my stream to crash, is why I do that. But so we'll mess around with liquidity running today at the same time, and then if this goes well, then next week I'll throw in deltas, and then eventually we'll build up to what my screen looks like when I'm not streaming, which, just so you guys know, right, it's liquidity in the bottom, CVD here, news on the other side. Normally I actually have news on the left and the flows on the right, but it's all more or less the same. What I will say on this, guys, is so I see a question about RAM. Like, RAM really matters a lot for your ability to run all these applications. Web browsers are really memory intensive. So I mean, I see 64 gig RAMs. Is that going to be fine? That's probably going to be fine for most of you. I have 128 in this computer though, because this is my work computer and everything. Anyways, I didn't want to yap about memory or anything, but let me know if you guys enjoy actually seeing the extra stuff. Maybe we'll do some explanations here and there. I normally try to hide a lot of this, to be honest, but we'll try to open up a little bit more. BCH is the hedge against inflation. Is Bitcoin Cash going down? I was trading it yesterday. Yeah, Bitcoin Cash gives no shits. It's a very strong coin right now for whatever reason. I feel like it's probably getting set up for an ATF here, to be honest, or something like that. 64 is a must. Lost 32 last week. Yeah. I would say 64 is probably baseline nowadays, which sounds crazy because I remember the days when I built computers way back in the day and I'd have 8 gigs, right? So it's pretty crazy how things go on. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here. But before he means that the RAM actually died, just so you guys know. Yeah, Bookmap's a terrible hog. BCH on hood? That's so dumb. Okay, so before I get started, though, I got 140 of you in here and 15 likes. Press that like button for me, guys. Let's go ahead and get into the outlook, though. So I'm going to start off with the macro, and we'll work our way down. Macro has no dramatic changes. We'll just kind of run through some of the main talking points, right? The first talking point I always make is, upwards continuation. It's a very strong trend, and my whole plan is around the trend continuing, right? Definitely not trying to fade the macro trend in any ways. Point number 2, though, is around, where we're at. Seasonality and the local range, momentum loss, doesn't really bode that well for being giga bullish right now. So basically the plan right now is that either where we pulled back today is going to be setting in a kind of local swing point, and we'll talk about that in more detail on medium time frame. I don't think that that's that likely. More likely what's going to happen is that we'll attack the range lows from this range that we're building right here. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I do think that, even though I don't think that we're going to be trading really far down by any means, I do think that, maybe Bitcoin could trade into the, upper 100s or the lower 100, excuse me, like towards 101 or something like that. That's kind of where I'm at right now. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of macro yet because my macro plans don't change a lot. I'm going to move over to this chart really quickly and see if I can have any ideas. More or less the main talking point is like, we're probably going to do summer chop. Summer chop this year will not look like what it looked like last year, and it will not look like what it looked like the year before. I think that this time around, at least what I'm hoping, I can only guess with this kind of shit. What I'm hoping is that it's going to play out what I doodled like a month ago or a few weeks ago now. The idea that we trade up, or we chop up people, right? But in like kind of a bullish manner. The background music was weird for a second there. It was like reverberating on my end. So that's like the main kind of talking point right now. From a levels standpoint, yearly value area high is like, just under 104K. So that's definitely local support right now. If 104 gets lost, then expect us to trade down to 100. If 100 gets lost, down towards, the upper 80s. If we start to get above local resistance at like 108, 107, then your obvious upside target is not quite 120. I would actually say you want to front run 120 and target more like 115, 116 if that was the case. I don't think that trading any sort of momentum right now makes a whole lot of sense. Your main goal right now should be focused on the long term, the idea that we probably will trade up later in the year. That's your main focus right now, in my opinion. And then beyond that, you are mostly trading intraday if you want to be actively trading. I don't think, like, with volatility slowly trending downwards right now and this range compressing out, if you're trying to trade for momentum, like large swing momentum moves right now, it's only going to get worse for you before it gets better. So, that's not a new thought by any means. Once we traded up here, that's been the expectation as we build out this kind of larger, multi-month range, right? Range high, range low. Keep this in mind. Like, that's essentially what you're building out. For shits and giggles, we will draw that on this chart really quickly. Okay, basically we want to have it starting here and then going to the exact point, right? Normally, let's go ahead and, I never do this kind of stuff, but I'll do it for you guys today. We'll just run it like that. That'll be fun. So that's the macro range that you're building out, give or take. Macro range low, 88K, macro range high, 109, 108, give or take, yeah? Okay, that's more or less the end of the macro synopsis. If you guys have any questions about the macro plans or anything, please definitely hit me. But I didn't have any notes or anything today, so I'm just running off the top of the dome piece here. One thing, I wish the TradingView wouldn't copy all my drawings from tools to tools, right? So if I like draw this VWAP, it won't copy from chart to chart, but any of the volume profiles change as I change tickers. I don't really like that. I wish that I could just have the same panel and change tickers and have the volume profiles not copy over, but is what it is. I'm gonna go ahead and delete this shit. If there's any questions, I'm gonna read through right now, and then we'll kind of finish up the macro here and move on to medium time frame. All right, what do we got? My left ear is getting more alpha than my right ear. You got your headphones on backwards. If Bitcoin ranges, alts will fly. They're building up, it seems. I definitely do not think that you want to be betting on alts in any way. The main plan for me with alts is, I do have some, game plans of some of the strong alts. There's a very, very small handful of strong alts. If you guys are scrolling around on Twitter and getting sucked into the FOMO around alt season right now, you're gonna have a bad time, right? Yes, alts will go up a lot one day later this year. I am confident in that, but you don't want to be betting on alts. Right? If you let's take alts, right? This is the entirety of alts, 100%, right? This much, and I'm being generous, is what you want to be looking at right now. This remaining aggregate of 99% will go up a lot, or at least out of this 99%, the majority of it will go up. Not all of it will go up. But what makes this go up versus what makes this sliver go up? This sliver goes up whenever the fuck it wants to, or whenever Bitcoin gives it permission, right? If Bitcoin's kind of healthy, then your hyper liquids and your fart coins of the world can go up, right? That's the simple logic. But what's going to make the other batch of shit, actual dog shit, go up is only when Bitcoin legs up a lot. Everybody's view on these things is so wrong, right? Because you're not actually looking at the charts or trying to think these things out yourself. You're just watching, you're just following some tweet from some asshole on Twitter, right? How do the majority of alts go up? Review this period in time if you want, right? I'm spoon feeding you guys, right? What happens during this period? When Bitcoin is strong, you got like 5 coins, that are going up with Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin's going up and you got like 5 coins going up with it. The rest of the coins are fucking lagging their asses off, right? And then once Bitcoin loses its momentum and starts to actually build out that range is when these dog shitters actually leg up. And then that's when you DM me and go, why is XRP outperforming Solana? And it's like, no, Solana went up 3,000% or whatever, right? XRP just went up 300% in a couple of days because it got carried up by Bitcoin, right? Now, I don't even really consider XRP to be in that kind of shit category, right? XRP is, just a boomer coin. I don't really consider it to be a total dog shit coin by any means. But hopefully that makes sense, right? If that does not, if that's not something that you've heard before or like really ever thought about before, take a fucking step back and think about what I just said, because generally the way that people are viewing alts is wrong, right? So I'm going to spoon feed you guys one more level. Now that you guys have the kind of thesis argument, how the fuck do you trade it, right? That's the main question. How do I trade this is I bet on Bitcoin first, and then whenever, whether it's now or later or right, whenever Bitcoin does this kind of dramatic leg, that's when I'm going to look to alts, especially as Bitcoin's legging and starts to, maybe build out its next range, right? These kind of periods are when I'm going to be laser focused on the shit coins, playing the catch-up trade. Really looking forward to seeing a big Twitter thread pop off on that exact idea next week. All right, let me pause. We'll check chat, finish up macro, and we'll move over into the next parts of the conversation. I'm guessing if Bitcoin makes new all-time high, your plan is invalidated. No. Look, to be clear, I am net long by like a lot right now, right? So like today, for example, I am going into a little bit of drawdown because I'm saying I think that we'll pull back doesn't mean I'm over here fucking swing short and selling my Bitcoin or anything, right? We're still massively net long right now. Jaggers, I'm just dropping fucking knowledge bombs on you morons today, to be honest. Listen up. The idea of whether I've been getting so many questions about, is summertime chop valid or is it invalidated, right? You don't care, right? There is no validation or invalidation for this stuff. It's just going to be at the end of the fucking summer, it's going to have played out or not, right? And you're either going to have lost money or you're not. It's that simple. Let's say, let me paint some scenarios for you right here, right? Let's say we bounce from here and we make a fresh high, right? And let's say it's like a substantial fresh high, right? It's got decent momentum to it and everything. Does us going to 116 mean that we're not going to go back down, right? Does 116 mean that we're just going to keep going up forever, right? You could have a scenario where you go to 116, come all the way back to 100, and then go up again from there, right? And then that is still summertime chop the way that I'm viewing it, right? Because let's be honest, a lot of people will be getting shit on during that period, so... The logic of whether it gets validated or invalidated doesn't matter, right? It's just a frame of mind for me to operate from. Let me take one step further take this one step further to a simple level. We're going to use the Hisaka lesson. Hisaka's pin tweet for ages used to be that it doesn't matter if it's a bull or a bear. You know, is it a bull market? Is it a bear market, right? It doesn't matter. You just trade the market, right? I used to teach this lesson back in like 2021 and 2022, right? When we look at like the last time, one of the main questions throughout this period, oh, that's the wrong drawing tool. One of the main questions I used to get throughout this kind of period was during these kind of stages was around, you know, even these stages throughout this entire period. Are we in a bull market or are we in a bear market? Especially in these days a lot. Here's the lesson, guys. If you're overly focused on, oh, it's a bull market, so I need to be long, it's a bear market, so I need to be short, you're going to be late to like everything, right? This only becomes a bear market once it's already drawn down like 50%. This is when it's defined as a bear market, right? So did you want to wait and draw down 40, 50% before you started taking profit and selling shit? No, right? You got to be proactive and think like before it's a trend, right? It's the same kind of thing with buying, right? You got to buy before the trend is super obvious to benefit from the trend. So I'm gonna stop now, but maybe I need to cut out the caffeine on the streams. Honestly, can't handle it. All right. Hopefully everyone's doing well. Hopefully we just learned something from the crackhead rambling. On your macro thesis, you wouldn't see a scenario where we break out of this range in Q3 momentarily, solely based on seasonality thesis. I think it's low probability, but could happen. 100%, dude. 100%. Right? I have like a mental framework for how I envision price moving forward, which is some sideways resolving upwards, right? But like I'm not going to get caught up on the semantics of it's a higher low or anything like that, right? Think about how many people were calling this bearish structuring, right? If you, from a simple structuring standpoint, it was over during this period, right? Or specifically during this period, right? This was super bearish, yeah? So I'm not going to get caught up in any of this kind of stuff. We could do, you could imagine you do the exact opposite where you make a higher high, like a substantial higher high, and then pull back and kind of do that same kind of thing. This is super bullish for us to trade like this, but this could still be summertime chop. You could do the same thing like this where you go down a lot lower, even lower. Maybe you even like chop upwards an entire summer, right? There's all these different kind of versions of it that it could be. It doesn't really matter to me. The main takeaway from the chop thesis, guys, is not about where we go locally. It's about the idea of not expecting momentum to take place in the market, right? That should be your key takeaway from here. You have very short-lived periods of momentum in markets, and you need to get good at identifying when the momentum in the market is gone and when you've started to build out value, right? And we're in value building stage right now. So I'm going to digress. All right, what do we got? Gotta be fluid, 100%, Nelly. Spoon feeding is all about perspective. I mean, if that wasn't spoon feeding, I don't know what is. Up or down? Yes. All right, guys. So I'm gonna go ahead and move forward. Hopefully we learned something from that ramble. Let me get some water real quick, actually. Okay, I've got 160, 170 of you in here and 34 likes. Press that like button for me. Okay, so we covered the general macro synopsis. I'm going to do a little bit of a VWAP scan for you, then we'll go into medium time frame. So, quick VWAP arguments, right? The yearly is shaping up in an interesting way, right? It has no clear momentum. I would say that this is mostly a neutral. At best, it's neutral bullish, right? So this is, not really a specifically bullish nor bearish kind of VWAP. Structurally, we're building, value above the yearly value area high, which is starting to make us slope upwards, right? We love that. We want to see the yearly sloping upwards while this is compressing. That's great. I think that for this chart, the simple argument is that if you lose the yearly value area high and you trade below it, it means that you trade down to the yearly VWAP, right? So if you lose 103, 104, you trade to 94, 95. That's the kind of basic logic that you derive from this chart. The way that we're developed, I don't want a bear push, right? I'm just going off what's in front of me. What I see right now is exactly what I saw in Q1, right? This looks very similarly to me, right? I don't think I yapped about this super hard publicly, but I did it more privately in the Paragon, where I talked about like how this is kind of setting us up for that momentum shift to swing back in and reaccept value. I thought this would be the high, to be honest, but you know, we went a lot higher, right? When I was originally talking about it. So I think that this is essentially just doing the exact same thing. I don't think it's going to lead. Here's the caveat though. It's shaping up similarly from a momentum standpoint, but it's going to hopefully be like this, where it does pull back a little and then it resolves higher, rather than it being a kind of shift all the way back to the other side of value. I don't really see that happening. If we saw something like this, not good, right? You know, that would probably bode very, very poorly for the remainder of the year. Okay. All right, so for the quarterly, it is the same exact argument, although it has started to actually materialize a downside play, right? So we are accepting back into quarterly value, which tells me we're going to target down to 96K. Pretty straightforward. I kind of hope that that defense level comes in. There are a lot of little, you know, supports and stuff in here, so maybe we get bid up here soon and kind of reclaim going into next week. I don't, you know, gun to head, it's more likely that we pull back more before we go up higher. Same kind of picture on the monthly and the weekly. Monthly, right, we're basically pulling back to previous monthly, right, because we just developed a new monthly open. Same kind of thing on the last weekly, right, you know, just coming back to previous weekly. So it's kind of beautiful how the monthly and the quarterly are the same chart, same information, and the monthly and the weekly are giving you more or less the same information as well, even though they're built off different time signatures. So love how simple that is. I'm gonna go ahead and pause there and do chat. What do you think about the thesis of yesterday? We had a bunch of bullish news for alts, and it's getting retraced, therefore we're due for lower. I mean, I'm not like overly concerned with that. However, I will say it lines up with my kind of, you know, thesis. Like the really bullish coins yesterday, Solana and Bitcoin Cash, I traded them both. And you know, my lot, I was insanely aggressive about taking profit on them. So I would say that, yeah, I mean, holding on to excess risk is stupid right now, right? My portfolio is, you know, basically 90% Bitcoin and like maybe 7% Solana, and then the rest hype. So like maybe like 3% hype right now. I'm heavily consolidated around Bitcoin because I think that we're set for more pain. And a lot of my hedge plays recently have been good, but I haven't been patient enough with them, I guess, is the takeaway for that. So yeah, I mean, anybody talking about accumulation for altcoins for alt season and not anything like that, you should probably mute those accounts. What are the coins you would buy if Bitcoin goes to 95, 93? We can move over into alts here shortly, brother, but I want to finish up Bitcoin first. So I will come back to that. If I don't start to answer that question when we do alts, just re-ask it. What else do we have for Bitcoin? If you just come in here and say any lower time frame alpha, I mean, I'm not inclined to like do a long spiel and answer that question. I have a big YouTube video that's gonna be coming out later this week that can help you a lot. But yeah, I mean, the purpose of this is not to do lower time frame alpha, right? We're on higher time frame right now. I think Doc said he was in accumulation for season 3. I mean, I'm sure Doc, the caveat there is that Doc knows how to actually pick strong coins. So, I mean, he's probably not talking about shitters. And he's also probably not over here, like, aping into the top of the range high, right? He probably means he's making the plans for buying lower. That's different than if you're in accumulation mode right now where you're actively buying every day, then you're going to go into drawdown, right? By a lot, probably. Appreciate your thoughts. I was also pleasantly surprised by Bitcoin's strength, and it just feels like a matter of time before 110K breaks. But yeah, maybe in for more pain. Only time will tell, brother. Only time will tell. VWAP bans for Bitcoin, yay or nay? We like VWAP bans, 100%. We are banned. We are banned advocates. Fan supporters. Thoughts on syrup? We can look at alts here in a minute, brother. All right, let me do medium time frame Bitcoin, and then we'll move over to altcoin arenas. Okay, so here's some of my plans. Let's delete these, and we'll redraw it all. Let's go to 4 hours, so it's a little cleaner. Here's the thought process, right? Number one is, we're at local range high, or we're at local range high, right? And we've rejected from there. So, when we were here, the argument was this is the high volume node for the range. This is where I expect us to either trade up into, go sideways and reject, or trade up to here, go sideways and go up from here, right? We went sideways and legged up again into the value area high. It's basically the same kind of argument now as we come back into the range, is that you probably expect this to be somewhat rotational down here in high volume. From here, we're either going to put in a bounce or we're going to leg down from here. So it's going to be really important to pay attention to how this next range develops. I don't think that it's probably quite done selling off. It will probably sell off maybe one more little baby leg before it starts to build out this range. Paying attention to a lot of the context clues around what do take flows look like and what's going on with the liquidity will be pretty much everything I'm going to be looking for deciding whether I want to send along here from here, or whether I want to be playing more defense and expecting to trade down lower. As it stands, right, like structure overall is not that bullish or bearish, it's just choppy. So per this chart alone, I would expect price to trade a little bit lower from here before it could, try to put in a new high. Structurally, lower high, lower low, right? So, I don't necessarily think that you want to bet on it being a lower low, but you do want to probably bet on price trading down. The most, maybe fuck you scenario will be us bouncing from here and then breaking down. So a classic little dead cat bounce Reno, something like that. That's more or less what I'm operating off of. I'm not too interested in trading medium time frame like this, because since there's not very much momentum, it means that you're really subject to a lot of round trips and scratch trades. So I'd much rather focus on intraday trading for all my active stuff right now, while I wait to see how medium time frame is going to kind of play out or develop. If there's any questions on medium time frame, definitely hit me, but most of the information is pretty clear on your screen, right? Like all the swing highs and swing lows are saying this is really important support right now. Local swing highs are saying that, definitely got some resistance around 107. Great visualization of all the high volume and the low volume, right? We originally traded into the low volume twice and rejected from it, and now this is the time where we have accepted through it. So it does kind of mean that, either we're going to find support right at the tip of the high volume node, or, if we don't bounce from here, it means that we rotate through the high volume and, the range looks like this. So you're either getting a range right here or a range, a larger range below it. That's pretty much the, kind of quick thoughts I can come up with from this chart. Let me see if there's any other charts that are worth mentioning. My original bottom, doodle is still kind of playing out crazily enough. So I could see us drive down and then do it, make an all-time high push from there. I can't tell you that I'm going to bet on that confidently until I see what the low looks like. I don't even remember drawing this, but apparently this was a zone I was highlighting. I don't even remember that. Does this one have a drawing? Not really. Just my Nostradamus from last week. All right, so we'll pause and do chat, and then we'll move on to the next section. Okay. Rejected off of value area high, slow bleeding back down to POC. Are we cooked? I mean, kind of, right? I think I already did the explanation good enough, Where we're local, yeah, you don't open a short into where we're at because you're at support. You open a short right here, you deserve to lose, right? If we put in a dead cat bounce from here, maybe I fade that. Honestly, my main focus is always longs in these markets, so I'm going to be watching this after the stream, after I turn the stream off, to see, if maybe this is a bid zone. I mean, what the fuck just happened? This platform's retarded sometimes. I mean, there is clearly some bid support coming in this zone, so I will be paying very close attention to this 105, 106K area. If I wasn't streaming right now, I probably would have already been flirting with starting to build up along. But I don't want to take the risk while I'm streaming. Okay. Just DCA in a downtrend is the worst retail strategy there is. You know, it really is, right? The only thing that you can do that with is Bitcoin. You know, if you DCA Bitcoin, you'll be aight, you know. But if you run DCA strats, in Q4, my favorite influencer told me it's gonna be alt season, so I'm gonna start DCAing now so I don't miss it because I have a job. You're gonna go into so much drawdown before then that you're probably gonna end up selling the bag before your coin ever goes up, you know. So everybody goes through that lesson. You know, I'm not immune from that. In 2018, one of the reasons why I round tripped so much of my 2017 gains was because I kept DCAing into ETH killers, which was, you know, in hindsight, is embarrassingly stupid. But you know, that was, you know, I was dumb back then. So that was one of my mistakes. I round tripped an enormous amount of. I made a lot of money with ETH and Litecoin and things like that, and then I would DCA it into chains that you've never even heard of. You know, I remember I had a big bag of Zilliqa. You know, maybe 10% of you know what Zilliqa is. You know, so there's a lesson in that, right? All right. Oh, did I read that wrong? Why are we saying bandits? Oh, wait, VWAP bandits? VWAP bandits indeed. Senate just passed Trump's spending bill, moving the House for the final vote long-term, debt flying. Yeah, guys, so I mean, you know, I don't really spend too much time yapping on this, but, you know, on the macro time frame, right? I mean, I always present things simple and just talk about like the trend being up and stuff. But one of the prevailing reasons for why we think, you know, that this is going to keep, you know, this is the first time in a long time that, you know, a large nation state with a large economy has been so, you know, supportive and conducive for crypto. So Bitcoin is going to continue to do really well, and stable coins are going to make a lot of people money. So, I mean, the outlook for the next 3.5 years for crypto is pretty fucking promising. I don't like to yap about all the macro stuff all that much, to be honest, but it's clearly a valid kind of thing, right? You know, valid argument. Crazy difference between the NQ and the ES today. I would imagine this is probably like one or two individual stocks that's fucking this up. So is there like a big tech stock that had a, you know, poor earnings or some sort of, you know, bearish reason for it to sell off? It's probably all it is that like a couple of tech stocks sold off a ton, and then the S&P is not as affected by that because it's not weighted the same way. But yeah, I mean, the boomers are looking good. Honestly, guys, I would have for sure taken this as an intraday long if I wasn't streaming, but I don't multitask like that. Got too much shit going on in my life. Multitasking is a sure way to make mistakes. Just reading through the chat, boys. Let's see what we got. Remember when EOS? I remember at my old corporate job, I had a coworker that was a lot older than me that was an EOS fanboy, and I had most of my worth in ETH at the time, so I just saw that EOS got delisted. If you're not bullish Bitcoin SV, then why are you even here? True. Satoshi's vision, the real coin. Tesla, I think. Yeah, boys, that makes a ton of sense, right? Tesla getting shit on would 100%. That could definitely carry the NASDAQ down a little bit, right? You guys are probably spot on with that. I don't really care. I don't really do a whole lot of individual stock stuff with equities, right? Almost all of my equity exposure is just in the S&P and the NAS. See a lot of people saying crypto is no longer a good investment because it's not a 5x, but it's the best investment. I mean, people are dumb. Like, yeah, things aren't as easy, as free as they once were, but this is still definitely, you know, the place where you're trying to make money, you know? Don't worry, Max, I took the lung for you, legend. What are the triggers on BTC? Well, bro, I'm not locked in, but location, and takerfuls and liquidity, right? So I'm not really paying that much attention right now, but I can almost guarantee this is a pretty fucking clean setup. I mean, the location makes a lot of sense for me. This is something I know you're in the group, so this is a level that I've been talking about in the group for a minute. You know, insanely, you know, insane open interest wipe, right? Yeah, this was definitely a free trade setup. Now, the question with these kind of trade setups is just how far are they going to bounce, right? Are you going to fail at the daily, at the composite range, right? Are you going to reaccept the range and trade all the way back up to the value area high? Are you going to struggle at the weekly value, right? What's the POC of this range looking like? POC is like right here. POC is right around the weekly, right? So there's a lot of reasons why you would fail with this trade, but it's still good for intraday nonetheless. I'm not really here to teach you guys how to intraday trade though right now. You can join Paragon for that, high key. Okay, it's almost time to move over into alts. Let me read the last couple questions and then we'll do altcoins. Okay, what do we got? What do you think is the next bubble narrative in crypto? You know, man, if I was really smart enough to know those kind of things, yeah, I would probably be clouded up a lot harder in our space or something. Look, I've talked about this kind of approach. I don't talk about this as much, but this is something I used to teach a lot. In trading, there's kind of three main groups that people belong in, right? Early, middle, and late, right? The early guys are the guys that either think they're gigabrains or actually gigabrains, right? Being early means that the upside is the maximum, but the downside is also the maximum, right? Because what's the expectancy on people that are early to things? It means that you're going to lose a fuck ton, because if you're early, you cannot be right about everything. And the earlier you are, the more prone to being wrong you are, yeah? And then there's me. And more, I would say I'm not quite in the middle per se. I would say I'm like early middle with some of my big swing plays, where I have friends that are these guys, and I get shilled on things all the time. And if you get shilled on stuff all the time, you can kind of get good at knowing like, oh, that was a good shill or that was a bad shill. Sometimes it might be, damn, that was clever and that was a good name. I'm going to go fucking ape that because my boy shilled me on it, yeah? Sometimes it's more, an actual thesis or whatnot, right? But instead of trying to be the early people, because realistically, you're not going to be successful at that most likely, or at least I wasn't. I am just friends with people that are early, and I'm in the middle, and I'm just a trader, right? So if the coin is good and my boys are shilling me on it, I'm going to trade it. And I think that this has the highest expectancy for most people, because you can be earlier than a lot of the other people, so you can enjoy the move and kind of participate in it, but not early enough to where you're dealing with a lot of the kind of failures, yeah? Because a lot of things fail before they materialize into anything. Study that. I've done this explanation many times before. Almost all of my really big swing trades in crypto have been from being that early middle participant, right? DeFi. I did not really do that well with DeFi in the summertime of 2022. Let me show you guys this. Summer of 2020, excuse me, I misspoke. This is when DeFi had its moment. DeFi summer. I kind of misdrew that. DeFi, or I guess DeFi summer was probably all of this. I don't really remember. I don't remember when it started or ended. I didn't really participate in this, but I went crazy buying up DeFi in these periods, and they went up a lot, right? So I wasn't early, but I wasn't late either, yeah? The same kind of thing. I did the same thing with Metaverse, where Metaverse plays started to really heat up in the summertime, but I was getting shilled on them before. I started positioning on them, and then, Metaverse plays popped off in Q3. Or I guess, yeah, in Q3. That's the lesson. Study being medium early to trends and regimes and narratives. Good stocks are actually goated to relative strength, stronger than crypto in the general in the past 2 years. You're probably saying that because I said I don't pick individual stocks very much. It's just not my thing, guys. Like, I am kind of just, I could try to say the smart way and say, well, my edge is with crypto and I'm just, better at trading crypto. The reality is probably more so than anything that I'm just lazy with it. I'd rather just put a lot of my legacy exposure into boring things like the S&P, NAS, and silver and just chill. I don't put money into the S&P for it to make me money necessarily. I do it just because it's just the logical place to park excess money in the process of, setting up a proper port and diversifying. Do you think with all the big funds and countries coming to scoop up Bitcoin, do you think that by 2023 we can be around 1 million? Look, dude, yes, I think that we could. Should that be our focal point, right? It doesn't really matter to any of us. Yeah, trade what's in front of us, take it day by day. I'm not overly, concerned with thinking about that kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's very reasonable that Bitcoin's going to go up a fuck ton over the next, decade or whatever, right? We're witnessing finally the world realizing that they want to own this shit, and you're seeing an arms race to accumulate. It's a sprint to for all these people that are late to accumulate their Bitcoin. So I definitely think that bodes well for us over the next couple years or decade or whatever. Could you maybe go on some like where to park money? I mean, index ETF, how you manage it. I don't want to give every little detail away, but as you make, when you start off in percentages, you're gonna have more of your port in crypto, and as you make more and more money, you do want to bring money out of crypto and put it into other places. So I'm not I didn't go to school for any of this stuff, to be clear. I don't get help from anybody with any of these things either. Generally speaking, when I've gotten advice from people about where to park money and stuff, it's been terrible advice from old people. So, I would imagine most of the chat is on the younger side of things. So, you don't really want to be focused on like fixed income and a lot of, the passive things. You want to go and buy things that have relatively, high risk to them, to be honest, right? So for me, most of my boomer port is the S&P, NASDAQ, and silver. I have a few other things here and there. I do have a couple individual stonks here and there, but that's the majority of my positioning is just in ETFs. The main focus for you guys with that stuff is that you want to be nobody ever says this. Listen up. Pay attention to all the fees, right, of when you enter and when you exit an ETF position. As long as the fees are cheap on the ETF and it's a large liquid one, then it's probably a good play. Please take everything I just said with a grain of salt, because you frankly, right, I mean, I just learned all this shit on my own as I built up my money slowly. I had nobody to teach me these things, so whether I'm saying things right or wrong, that's kind of up for debate, to be honest, right? But when in doubt, keep things simple. Should you be a fucking guy out there trying to pick a bunch of individual stocks and stuff? Probably not, right? The indexes are really one of the best plays for the average person. It's like the same kind of argument as, look at what's happened over the past year or two, right? A lot of the people that tried to pick individual shitcoins didn't make that much money. If they had just bought Bitcoin, they would have made less, but been chilling. So I'll digress. But I actually do want to make a video on, I have a lot of really cringe ideas for engagement baiting stuff for education where it's gonna be cringe but also useful. I did think about the idea of making a video that's like, so you made it trading, what do you do now? Nobody ever tells you like, oh, you need to do this with your legal structures and you need to pay these taxes and you need to park some money over here and be ready for this and that, right? Nobody ever tells you any of those things, so I thought maybe I'll make that. The main reason why I'm hesitant to do it is because it's easy to say something wrong, and when people are all around the world, not everything's going to apply, right? Like the kind of tax I might have to pay is going to be completely different for somebody in a different region. So take everything with a grain of salt. Okay. For scalp or day trade time frame, like you're just basically asking what time frames do I use? Oh, does it change according to market condition? No, it does not, right? Scalping intraday is always going to be on like a 1 minute, 5 minute kind of time, like low time frame, regardless of if we're volatile or not. Okay, I'm going to try to read through some of this chat really quickly and then we'll do alts. May the gods give us Q3 meta this time. Hopefully, Timothy, hopefully. Then we should rotate our profits into stacking Bitcoin. Honestly, guys, like, look, your approach, you're trying to make fiat currency, right? You want more currency to, you know, purchasing power, right? And what you want to be doing as you're making this is you want to be parking it into assets, right? You can't just sit on dollars or fiat forever, right? If your bank account is just full of dollars, you're losing money every couple of months that goes by, yeah? So you need to take some of that money, whatever you don't need, you know, basically to spend, go and put it into assets, right? Go and put it in the S&P, you know, go and put some of it into Bitcoin, right? And you almost like have like these are the only assets in the world that you have I don't give a fuck if the price is up today, I'm still gonna buy it kind of attitude, right? Yeah, it's better if you can time your buys on these things on red days. It's obviously better, but really it doesn't matter that much in the grand scheme of things if you're buying on a green day or a red day if you're a long-term person. So that is really the kind of mindset you want to have. Is you accrue money, you cannot sit on fiat. If you know, it's very, very easy to make money and then sit on fiat, but if you're doing that as somebody who's made this mistake before, right? This is why I have a lot more equities exposure nowadays. In my opinion, crypto is really hard to day trade now as 80% of trades are processed by bots. It just is what it is, man. You know, I mean, that is, that's not new by any means. I think I would probably say that every trade has a bot on one end and a person on the, you know, it's either bot to bot. It's either bot to bot or bot to person. That's every trade, right? There isn't really how many, you know, the number of peer-to-peer trades that actually exist is so fucking low on derivatives, right? You're almost always trading against the bot, so it's not new. I don't think that I don't really care too much about that. That's not, bots are definitely not, listen up, boys, listen the fuck up. Bots are not the reason why this is harder to trade. This is harder to trade because what drives Bitcoin's price up and down is a completely different dynamic than it ever was before. If you've traded in the, you know, my boomer days where you traded any of these periods, right? These are the days when what made price go up and down was leverage in the system, right? People betting on derivatives is what made price go up and down, right? From the high time frame even to the low time frame. Like literally a lot of macro trends back in the day were really in a large part driven or at least supported by derivatives. That's not the case anymore, right? This is a spot market. So this is harder to trade. Yeah, like the algos and the bots that exist nowadays are going to be better than they used to be because we got big boys playing with us now. But I'm telling you right now, mark my words, the main reason why this is harder to trade is not because of the bots. It's because of the dynamics of what makes us go up and down is just completely different. Back in the OG days, I used to just PvP people on the perps. And oh, this guy's a moron and just made a big mistake. Thanks for the fucking quick buck, you know? And that doesn't exist anymore, you know? If you're trying to PvP perps on liquid stuff like Bitcoin, you know, those opportunities just don't really exist the same way. Day trading is definitely not a gambling addiction if you're not a moron, bro. It gets harder and harder as time goes on, but to call it, I mean, look, guys, all of trading is gambling. Even if you have the strongest edge that has ever existed in markets, right? I have such powerful edge that I have a 90% chance expectancy, a 95% chance expectancy is still a gamble because it's still a 5% chance that it fails, right? Everything you ever do in life or in markets is going to be a gamble if you want to look at it big picture like that, right? I think that calling a lot of what you do gambling is actually useful because it can reduce some of the pressure. So I call a lot of what I do gambling. But to just say that it's just, you know, a gambling addiction is, you know, kind of lacking nuance. It's not cringe, to be honest. That would be useful for the newcomers, of course. Can't be held responsible for what the bozos do with the new information. Yeah, man, but Nelly, here's the troublesome thing is, you know, you go out there and you try to help, but if I say something wrong, I can be held, responsible for that potentially. So we'll see. Criminal, you only have 14K subs. That's because we don't bait and do lame stuff, I mean, I used Bitcoin to park money, but I don't even know if that's good. I also park some in Vanguard. No, I mean, if you're just slowly parking extra money in Bitcoin and accumulating more and more of them, it's probably a good thing. Last day of July dump possible. Anything's possible, homie, so of course. Rotate your savings into Beeple NFT, bros. 100%. This guy's spitting facts over here. gonna have to hire you for the Paragon, honestly. The only bull case for Q3 is that it doesn't turn bullish and the 4-year cycle is dead. It's more dead than Jesus. I mean, the 4-year cycle is gonna slow, is already, kind of dematerialized in a lot of ways. How do you better handle emotions when trading, especially areas? Are we better to turn here, or are we screwed type of moments? The simplest answer is time. One of the hardest things about trading is the uncertainty of it all, right? Most things come down to coin flips in a lot of ways for you. So you have to accept that if I'm playing golf, I have an enormous amount of control over my outcomes, right? If I hit the ball good, I can limit, my number of strokes, right? With trading, even if you take the best bets that you can take, you have zero control over the outcome. So one of the most important things for you guys, if you're struggling with a lot of the psychological stuff, is the acceptance of having zero control. Once you learn to come to terms with the randomness of it all, it can help you alleviate a lot of the pressures, right? You don't have any control. All you're doing is just put good inputs in, and you just hope the output's okay. That's all you can do. I have copious amounts of psychology information and education in the Paragon, so that's going to be my hard chill on that one. Life is a gamble. That sounds like a fucking bar from a 90s rap song. It is definitely my expectation that momentum returns in Q4. It probably starts up in Q3. Is trading spot worth it, or is it always better to use perps? Most of the time, a lot of you guys are going to be better off trading spot. You cannot short with spot. It's just the primary, here's the pros. Here's the pros, whether they're dumb pros or really valid pros. Like the dumb pro for derivatives is that you can short. The real pros of derivatives is that they're going to be cheaper, right? They're going to have lower fees and they're going to be more liquid, right? That's the main pro to the majority of derivative trading. A lot of you guys should trade spot though, because you're going to have a higher, you're going to do better with spot a lot of the time. So I really actually say that, portfolio stuff should be all like spot longs. And then the best use case on how, for you guys is going to be, selling derivatives at key times, but I don't really think I should push most of you guys in that direction because of how hard it is. So most of you guys are going to be better off trading spot with the majority of your money and then only trading like 5-10% of your money with perps, for example. No more spaghetti charts. I still use them 100%. These are both spaghetti charts right here. Paragon category and index. I use spaghetti charts every week still, 100%. What do we get in Paragon group? I need to join. I could have sworn you were already in the group. I thought I recognized your name. The answer to your question is what do you get? You get everything. You get all of my education. The same thing with Doc and Charlie as well. You get to see our trades, our live streams, all of our tools, all of our systems, all of our templates. You get everything. That's the honest answer. I used to want to be secretive about stuff back in the day, and I'm really concerned that my edge is going to decay and people are going to take my systems and whatnot. But if I'm being honest, like less than 10% of you will be able to trade my stuff. So I'm really not that worried about edge decay. And by the time you guys will have like learned how to do these things, I'll have already moved on to like a more, to the next evolution of my system. Listen, MF Doom. MF Doom's a legend. We fuck with him big time. Thank you, Nelly. Appreciate you. Am I in better terms with Insilico these days? When did I ever say I was in bad terms with him? Insilico and I never hit it off big as friends by any means, but there's no hostility towards each other. I mean, I'm not friends with a lot of people because I mostly stay in my own lane and stick to myself for the most part. And going through the early systemization videos can really tell your perspective has changed. Yeah, I mean, well, every year that goes by is an opportunity for me to grow and learn a lot as a person, So some of these original videos where I'd be recording them in, May 2021 or, that's so long ago nowadays. So yeah, I mean, my perspective has definitely changed. I have zero, I used to be scared about what I was teaching and stuff, but nowadays I'm so confident in what I teach and so confident in my ability to keep coming up with new stuff that I share everything now because like that. One of the things I actually still really enjoy about trading is the idea that like I have my approach and my system, but I know it's like if I'm stagnant, it'll stop working. So I like the idea that I like the ever evolving approach, and it's like, what are the next couple patterns that I'm going to discover going to be, and how am I going to incorporate them, and what part of the system are they going to fall into? Like how I keep moving forward with the system might not be something a lot of you guys would enjoy, but for me personally, I really enjoy like the never-ending process of like refining and rebuilding everything. All right, so I finally caught up with chat. I'm going to run through some altcoins here and there. I don't really care too much about alts for the most part, but I'm going to run through some of them. So let's do that. First off, I mean, when you just quick glance at equities, right? I mean, good stuff across the board. Nothing negative to say about these things. You definitely want to be in accumulation mode on any of these. I don't own gold, but I do own silver. I never talk about this as I've owned silver on and off since like 2017. Yeah, I think it's, is it an investment that you really want to bet on? Probably not, but it's a great place to just park an extra buck that you might have. ETH is dog shit. We don't really care about ETH. That's that. Do Solana next. Honestly, Solana's pretty shit too. I think, my main synopsis with this is that I've already had my fun with it. Doing this, going up 1,000%. Depending on where you draw the bottom, it might even be like 2,000%. So, I've already had my fun with this. Just like ETH, I did the same thing where I made a lot of money with ETH in 2021, and I still own some ETH, but I just never really bought back my ETH stack fully. So as it stands, I have no real reason to be accumulating back my Solana that I sold. Maybe that changes where we trade lower or we trade higher, and I change my mind. But I do own some Solana, but it's probably only like 6-7% of my port. Where there's a period where it was like a considerable chunk at one point. So yeah, there's that. Hype is one of the ones that I own. I'm underweight on Hype, but it's a good looking chart. So I think generally speaking, you're just looking to buy the dip on this thing. Hold on, the music cut off. Let's get that started. Okay. Per Hype, what I would say would be that if Bitcoin is putting in its lows now, then you're trying to buy Hype just a tiny bit lower than where it's at. So maybe you can buy Hype at like 38. If Bitcoin's not putting in its lows now per the medium time frame plan, then you're looking to buy this a lot lower, which means you want to be looking to buy it closer to like 35-ish, I would say. Those are the main Hype plans. So I probably will be looking to buy back some Hype here. I really like this coin. I didn't trade it very well. My average entry was kind of dog shit because it was closer to $20, and then I sold a bunch. And now I'm starting to buy it back, so we'll see how things play out. Fart coin, I don't think it's a terrible coin by any means. I think that whenever Bitcoin ends up being bullish again, that this will be a leader of some sort. Right now, though, I'd be very, very careful with being long on things like this because structurally, it looks like it could definitely trade down to me. I mean, it is at support. Bitcoin's at support right now, so don't just short into this. But yeah, I would be careful about swing longs on this. We'll go ahead and skip through some of the memes, right? Because it's going to be the same kind of argument. Not overly excited about memes. Bitcoin Cash. I've been trading Bitcoin Cash a little bit recently. This thing has been insanely strong. Like yesterday, I caught this move from here to here, I believe. Yeah, it was this one. I thought, to be honest, it was just going to leg up again just like this. So I'm happy I took profit because it did pull back. But yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly why some of these boomer coins are so strong right now. Ripple was pretty strong recently. Bitcoin Cash is clearly the strongest out of all of them. I tweeted this out yesterday that, like, honestly, this is like ETF flow kind of vibes. Maybe it just has to do with Robinhood, like one of you guys said earlier. That is more or less it for some of the coins I'm interested in. I know a lot of you guys like syrup, so we'll look at this really quickly. That was my tool. There we go. I mean, I have not touched this coin yet. I know a lot of you guys trade it. Be careful, you know. I would buy the dip after it pulled back a ton, maybe. Not very interested in this coin, though. That's why I never talk about it on streams. That is more or less going to be the end of... What, Pengu's up today? What the hell? What's going on with Pengu? That is probably it. So I'll check chat. See what the boys are saying. Why are you net long right now if you expect lower? Because I don't want to sell my Bitcoin. And managing hedges is not easy when price moves the way it does. If I think like, I'm not about to be playing defense into support where we're at right now. But if we were to look worse, then I would play defense 100%. Like, the hedges will be opened, and, you know, the portfolio will get skewed around if I think we're gonna nuke. The thing is that I'm not that worried. Like, if Bitcoin goes from 106 to 100K, I don't really care that much about that, to be honest. You know, my port is consolidated heavily around Bitcoin. It's like 90+% of my shit. So if Bitcoin goes down 5% or whatever, like, you know, I'll be okay while the other, you know, altcoin bags are going down 30% or whatever, you know. So that's my, like, copium. If we just nuke one day, I'll be fine because I'm in Bitcoin mostly. I absolutely have plans of playing proper defense, but it's not been easy. And honestly, I'm not going to be like apologetic to anybody that some of my plays didn't work, because it just is what it is. I don't have control over it. If you say it's shit, do you mean short term, or does it have a chance in Q4? I think most everything will have a chance in Q4. The thing is that things that are bad will have short-lived windows, right? You know, dog shit coins will have a 2-week window of strength, and that's it. Where other things, you know, will just be strong month over month, like Bitcoin, for example. Waiting to see the ETF flows for Solana. ETH flows have been negligible. I think, yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into that, but there's no real... Why would anybody want to be investing in ETH if they're not getting yield from it? So, I mean, there's zero reason to pick ETH over Bitcoin from a, you know, investment standpoint. Where'd you sell your Solana, my brother? It's not that impressive, to be honest. So my buys are impressive, my sells are not, and I have a good excuse as to why. So my average buys were really good. My average sells were around here, like, you know, just under 200 basically after we legged down all the way. I'm not gonna LARP and say I sold the top. The reason why I did that, why I failed to sell the top on this one this time around, is because I was leveraged long for this move, and I was straight up euphoric. This happened on like a weekend, I think. Let's see. I could have sworn. Yeah, so like the really exorbitant days happened on like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday type of day. I don't remember exactly. I was leveraged long from this from like 184 or something like that. So I just had a monster day. And I remember seeing Doc was telling me he was selling some of his spot, and I just took profit on my perp trade. And I'm not going to lie, I round-tripped a ton of portfolio gains by selling this, you know, in like the 190s, 180s region. Not going to lie about it. I fucked that one up a little bit. But, you know, it's all good when your average is like $20, $30, $40, right? All my buys were super low on Solana for this cycle. Easy copium on my end. Best buy zones. We can look at Aave. I already covered some of those other ones, so I'm not going to cover all of them. I'll always love Aave because this is one of my bigger trades in my life, was trading this coin. What's my bid zone on this? Per this chart, you're looking at like 230. Over here, lower. Oof. Yeah, I mean, so basically this demand block right here is where you're looking to buy probably. So 240 to 230-ish, something like that. Any chance of $25 hype if Bitcoin goes down to 95? Could be. I can't predict these kind of things, you know. If Bitcoin's going to trade down a lot, then of course you could have lower entries on your alts. I don't really have any thoughts on Pengu. I don't know why it's strong right now. It looks good. You know, locally, there's clearly some Pengu demand coming in, per the chart. I think, you know, here's what I'll say. You're free to be bullish on these kind of things when they look good, but be very, very careful. When you see this thing on your timeline from large accounts, sell this shit. 100%. Can't even read that comment out, but well played. Well played. A gigabull on the hype long term? I don't know if I'm gigabull on it, but I mean, it just makes sense to bet on it, you know? It's a logical bet. Say, I'm about to bully your coin, brother. Because last I checked, this thing was ass. I don't even know how to spell it. Is it S-E-I? Yeah. You know, what am I supposed to say about these kind of coins, you know? I got nothing, you know? It's got no clear trend in any kind of direction, right? It moves like absolute dog shit, you know? How deep of a pullback was this? You know, this reminds me of why I stick to, like, larger altcoins. Like, this thing just moves like ass, you know? It's clearly got macro bear structure across the board. The monthly is the only bullish structuring it has right now, which would say that you buy the dip, you know, around 25 cents on it. But, you know, I can't be overly optimistic on this because this definitely is categorized as a weak coin. Pendle on this pullback? No, I don't think Pendle's that great right now, man. Pendle's been locally pretty weak. So look at this, right? I need it to look like this. If it looked like this, we're buying this bitch, right, on a dip. But with it looking like this, it's just a no good coin. Simple. Bro, just give me a 10x. I got you, Jingo. Just hit me in the DMs. I've got the 1000x play fired up in the chamber, ready to go, just for Jingo, not for anybody else. Ask and you shall receive, type shit. Check out BNB. Yeah, we can look at BNB. I haven't looked at it in a schminute. You know, BNB's been a absolute monster coin for a long time, as you can clearly see. I don't... Look. Like, the actual individual token price of BNB, that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the, you know, exchange itself. But I would bet that Binance's market share... Well, this has been pretty obvious for a while now. Binance's market share has been in a downtrend. If you've been here for a while, you know that back in, like, you know, 2020, 2021, Binance, after BitMEX died, Binance, you know, basically swallowed up the entire market. But their market share, market dominance has just been slowly declining. So if you're betting, if you're being smart and you're betting on BNB, then you're betting on Binance succeeding. Per the trend that's in front of us, of it losing market share, and the rise of more competition, I don't think that Binance is gonna grow, grow in a way that it did in the past. You know. Views on useless. I don't really do on chain, guys. Have seen Pengu shills already? Yeah, be careful, guys, when you're seeing the Pengu shills. Be careful. Had the penguin ringing the bell. Yeah, I saw that. Say moved entirely news related. Wyoming considering using it for infrastructure. That's funny. Nelly's tapped in with all the boomer news. Yeah, the only reason to buy Pengu is for the cuteness factor, 100%. We're spitting. What's your view on utility coins like Sui and Tau? You know, fuck utility. That's what I got for you, man. You know, you could have the best coin in the world, but, you know, Tau's still destined to go down, you know? Same thing with Sui. Sui's destined to go down. You know, I'll trade Sui here and there, but, you know, I'm not overly optimistic on any of these things, guys. And I'm not the fundamental person to ask on this anyways. BNB supply super under control at least, for sure. Same as Tron. You're spot on, Nelly. It's almost like we've had this conversation before. So BNB could be a good bet purely because it can get manipulated up, but not because there's any sort of like logical reason for it to appreciate. That was kind of the point I was trying to make there. All right, guys. So get in any of your last second questions or topics because we'll probably start to wrap things up here really quickly. Definitely keep your eye out for the new YouTube video coming out later this week. It's going to be really short and sweet to the point, but I think it's going to be hopefully an eye-opening experience for a lot of the people that want to start using Flow in a very simple and easy way that you can actually start to use it. So I'm pretty happy that it's been a learning experience for me to learn how to communicate very simply what I do, what I think, and what I do, right? It's been really hard for me to learn, like, how do I take this shit that is not complicated in my mind, but when I say it to you, it just sounds complicated. So how do I say this, you know, the simple version in my mind? How do I translate that over? I think I finally have had a really successful version of that. So I'm really excited about it. It's not like you're going to start making money or anything because of it, but it could be the video that makes things kind of click for you. EU edition, please. Yeah, I got you. Thoughts on shorting memes? You know, what am I supposed to say here? You know, on days where Bitcoin pops up a lot and is green and your meme is green, that's the day when you open a short, you know. If you're opening a short today where it's down, you know, your memes are down 3, 4, 5, 6%, you know, do you want to be, you know, opening a short on Fartcoin now? You know, sure, it could leg down, but you could also wake up, you know, and be underwater a lot. So, you know, you're playing with fire with shorting these things. If you want to short them, you have to do it on the green days so that you don't get run the fuck over. Need a 20 extra, my family goes into starvation. Yeah, I got you, bro. Just hit me in the DMs. All right, my friends, that's it for me. Hopefully you learned something. If you want to expedite your learning curve and learn from people like myself and Doc and Charlie, check out the Paragon group. Otherwise, I'll keep putting out free stuff for the boys as well. But obviously, Paragon stuff's going to be better. That's it for me, though. I'm out of here. Good luck. Cheers. Hope you enjoyed.